This is Professor Michael Chapman. I'm one of the most experienced IVF doctors in Australia. I believe that an important part that I can contribute is to educate patients in relation to fertility, infertility, and all that involves. These series of podcasts help to educate you. I hope they are helpful to you. If you wish to know more, however, I'm more than happy to have you contact me via email, which is profmchapman@gmail.com, or make an appointment to see me on 9138 4222.
We have a live question from Katie. She says, I'm currently doing unmonitored letrozole cycles, 2.5 M cycle days, 5 to 9. Why am I ovulating on different cycle days each cycle? I've ovulated cycle day 14, 17, and 27 a few times. Why would it vary despite doing the same medication dose/days?
I suspect, and I don't know the whole story, but normally a doctor gives letrozole for women with polycystic ovarian syndrome where ovulation is irregular anyway. Ideally, giving letrozole should bring you back into line. Personally, I give it earlier in the cycle, from day 2 to day 6, because that's the time when FSH should be being stimulated. If there's that irregularity of cycle, my own approach to that, and I'm not sure who you're seeing with how much of a specialist fertility doctor they are, I would be increasing your dose to 5 milligrams from days 2 to 6, and I would suggest to you that's more likely to bring you a more regular cycle in terms of ovulation. You're saying that you're not being monitored. I would generally, my monitoring of letrozole is not very intensive because I don't think it's necessary. But what I do is a day 21 progesterone. And if the day 21 progesterone is not happening, then I'll be increasing the dose the way I've just described. I'll go to 7.5 milligrams if that cycle is not back to a 28-day cycle. I'm not sure that whoever's monitoring you or not monitoring you is actually doing the best for you at the moment.
Prof, I've shared the contact details again in the chat in case Katie needs to see it. I have a question from Jen. She says, is it really possible for embryos to get mixed up? Like a woman gets pregnant with another person's embryo?
Well, it's happened. And that's, there's a case in Queensland that's happened. And I'm being asked this question by various sources, from lawyers through to newspapers, over the last month or so. My commentary is that, yes, it's always going to be possible. We do 100,000 embryo transfers in Australia a year, and this is the Queensland was the first reported case. I make the analogy of flying in an aeroplane. And what happened in the 60s and 70s with aeroplanes is quite a few air crashes relative to the number of flights that were taken. And what the air industry did was put in checking processes, absolute mandatory processes, where one person checked what the next person did. And if you now look at the statistics, the number of flights that actually crash from human error is actually very, very, very small. But they still happen, despite everything, that something is missed and it happens. And the same, I think, applies to us, because you can't, an embryo, when it's being transferred, from the time it starts its life to the time it gets transferred, particularly if it's been frozen, has about 15 steps where human error could step in. We have electronic systems these days to try and minimize that. Called RI witnessing is the most common. But you cannot say that it's never going to happen, as unfortunate as it is. If you talk to our scientists, they're obsessed by making sure that it doesn't happen. It's almost more important than the actual culturing of embryos, is to make sure they're the right embryos in the right place at the right time. When I do an embryo transfer, for instance, a patient comes into the room, I look at her driver's license, I look at her date of birth. We do that together with the embryologist, who then goes away and brings the lab sheet, which has the embryo number on it, to make sure that it's the same patient with the same telephone number. And then when we sit down and put the instrument in to visualize the cervix, and I'm ready to go, the next step is that the scientist shows me the name of the patient on the dish that she's put the embryo into, and the patient sees that, and we cross-check that, and then the embryo is uploaded and then put into the uterus by me. Multiple steps, which you could still get a mistake, but the odds are, 1 in 100,000 is a long shot. That's almost less than walking across the street in the centre of Sydney, of being knocked over.
And don't forget that you can access all the previous episodes by going to our website www.theivfjourney.com and select IVF Journey podcast from the navigation menu.